Kalimeragi, Kalisperagi, Kalinichta. No matter where in this wild, wacky, and sometimes wonderful world you might be, thank you for making the Highbury Squad part of your day. We end the week with one of your favorites, a massive game this coming weekend, and we're going to dive into what Mikel Arteta must do in order to beat Aston Villa. Let's rock and roll, squaddies. Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad. We made it to another Friday, everyone, and I made it home safe and sound, back in my surroundings with Tony, Vinny, and Vespa. At ease, squaddies at ease. And I'm delighted to be joined by one of your favorites and one of my favorite humans in the whole world, Mr. Dan Potts, aka Pottsy. Welcome back to Squad Central.
Come on, big up, big up, big up, big up all of you squaddies, big up everybody in the chat, big up everyone who's watching this on catch up. Do us a favor and hit the like button and subscribe to get Highbury Squad up to their next target, which I believe is 20k. So let's do this, people. Soph, absolute pleasure to come back on.
Welcome, and you're smashing it. I'm so proud of you. Football's 12th Man podcast. If you haven't heard of it, if you're not watching, you've been living under an Arsenal rock. Dan's doing some brilliant stuff over there. I'm very proud of what he has achieved so far, and there is so much more to do. And I appreciate you always coming on and supporting the show, Dan. And most of you will be listening on replay. It's Friday at 8 o'clock in the UK. So you're probably out having dinner, noodling on what is going to happen this weekend. Before we do that, I've got some housekeeping to do. As you know, we're partnering up with Football Prizes again this season. This competition ends on Monday. It's absolutely epic. You can get a game experience, Brighton versus Arsenal, and you're not going to regret that. And you can also put yourself into the hat, $3.95 for a ticket, and you will find yourself with a Patrick Vieira shirt or a Declan Rice shirt as well. Football Prizes, there's the link. I'm going to put it in the description. It's already in the description. Follow them at football_prizes. Put your name in the ring for this. It is absolutely awesome. Just think about it, Dan. For like £2, it will be £2 each for the person that's going to the game experience if they win, and $3.95 to end up getting a signed shirt. They're brilliant, aren't they?
I love Football Prizes, man. I love Football Prizes. They were sponsoring me this coming season. I need to hook up with them again. But listen, unbelievable prizes as well. And do you know what? Tom's actually got quite a few people on the Gooner Talk TV that have actually won them. And he gets them on and starts talking. So you guys have got to get involved, man, because honestly, they do incredible prizes. And it's not just shirts this time. Obviously, it's hospitality now. So maybe if you get them, you'll go and sit with hospitality judges, people. Come on.
No, brilliant stuff. Yeah, totally. And Tammy Steels, listen to our Chief Like Officer. Hit the like button, subscribe. Runs with Cows is here. Carol's here. PW's here. Trev is here. And let's see, someone special in the house as well. Well, Demsek is here. Gooner Works is here catching a live show, which is always epic. Greeny Man's here. And let's see, Donna Potts is here. One of my favorite mums in the whole wide world. Always have to salute Mrs. Potts. No doubt about that. Right, Dan, let's get stuck into this and talk about some football, right? So Gooner Russ is here. Let's not forget Gooner Russ.
I love Hoggy. Love Hoggy.
Listen, let me tell you something. The last time I saw Hoggy, do you think should I share this or not? Well, let's just say
go on, man. It's funny.
The last time I saw Hoggy was outside the Emirates last Saturday, and he was sitting on a wall with his lovely daughter Lucy, and Gianni Judges was doing his bit on AFTV, and I gave him a big hug, and he looked at me and goes, "Soph, I can't do it anymore." He'd had a few, Dan. He'd had a few. I know you ran into him as well.
I did. I said to him, "I'm going to the pub now. Are you coming, Russ?" And he just went,
no, he was done.
That was it. Just shook his head. I was like, "See you later, Hoggy. I'll see you next time, mate." Bless him. Do love Hoggy. He's one of my favourite people.
He's brilliant. It was he gives some of the best hugs, I tell you, Hoggy does. And also our musician and our favourite, Demian Arriaga, who's going to be
Yes,
doing a lot
Demian.
of the women's stuff on our show.
Come
We
on.
love Demian. He's probably on tour somewhere, banging drums for Miley Cyrus or some other superstar.
Love
Thanks,
Demian, man.
Demian, for
Big up,
tuning in.
bro.
Isn't he's just he's a top
Ledge,
class
man.
guy.
Ledge,
Yeah,
legend,
total
legend,
ledge.
legend.
Total ledge. Right, Potsy, massive game tomorrow. And I know, like, sometimes I feel that we over dramatize things, you know, but the truth is yes, every game in the Premier League is massive, but this massive one's come early, and in particular against a team that we dropped 6 points to last season. You would
Yeah.
say in the first match, I don't think at Villa Park we deserved anything. I don't think we were very good that day. Don't think we showed our best. In the game at the Emirates, it was one of those where you were scratching your head how we hadn't scored, and then by the end of it, typical 0-0, you get punished, you don't take your chances. It's Emery versus Arteta. Head to head, Emery has the best of Mikel, and you got to say, early on, this is a 6-pointer. And mostly, if they lose, I think it's acceptable. But for us, if we're serious and we want to win the league this season, these are the games that we absolutely have to win. Can Mikel crack the Emery code, Potsy?
He's going to have to, isn't he? Because there's a big debate at the moment that's been on Twitter and socials and was actually brought up by Yardman and Robbie, big up to them both, about who the better manager is. Now, in my honest opinion, I said this on my show, I think the two questions are very, very different. I think who's right for Arsenal is the question number one, and the question number two is who's the better manager, because the CV suggests that Unai Emery leaves Arteta dead in the water, but he's had longer as a manager and he's won a lot more in the game and had a lot more time to win stuff in the game. But if Mikel Arteta wins a trophy with Arsenal, we can have a serious debate about that again. Who's right for Arsenal should have been the question. And we saw that Emery wasn't right for Arsenal. As much as we believe he wasn't given a fair crack at the whip in terms of being backed, different structure, different in terms of the Cronkies weren't total ownership. We were conceding 22 to 30 goals against teams, and he was playing Lucas Torreira in the 10, trying to make him into a Santi Cazorla/Hazard. It wasn't working. So for me, there are definite positives that Unai Emery did, like get a team which was filled with Bellerins, Iwobis, Welbecks, El Nenis, Guendouzi's, Mustafis and Socrates is all up to a Europa League final and a point off a top four. But when you look at where he's at right now, you've just got to say, do you know what? Fair play, because what he's done at Villa is sensational. And people that say, no, Arteta's better, prove it. Go and beat him, because you keep bloody losing to him, man. Villarreal home and away, Villa home and away. It's not been great. So for me, I look at now and I think, yes, 100% this is a must-win game, Sophie. A lot of people are believing that this could be a draw and we'd be okay. Not for me. We need to win this game. This is a game that we absolutely have to win. Why? Because we're going for a title. We're trying to get in the top four, try and go against teams like this and go, yeah, go on, then we'll take a point. But for me, you have to be winning these games, because last season we didn't beat them and we didn't win the league. So for me, it's a must-win game, mate. And I will say this last year, right? I actually do believe this is the biggest compliment we can give Aston Villa. I feel like we're going to Anfield or the Etihad here. I actually think it's a mental test. I really do. Because it's been a tough fixture for a while now, and they are actually well respected now. They're a top of the table clash. They're a Champions League squad, and we absolutely have to beat them. So the biggest compliment I can give them is that actually I'm treating this like I would go in one of the big boys. And I think that proves how far they've come.
I totally agree with you. And I think what Demsek is saying here as well, psychologically, the team needs to be Aston Villa. And I've talked a lot about over the last few months about making up the small inches, Dan, and how in order to beat, Manchester City, where are you going to catch them, right? Because last season we beat City, we beat Liverpool, we got a point away against both, and we did all of the right things, but we dropped points to Fulham and West Ham, and we had a disastrous kind of 2 losses against Aston Villa. Mentally, this is massive. And each season that we've not won the league, okay, the improbable year, no one was expecting that. Last year, we kind of, we had a great opportunity and we missed it, right? We didn't win the league. Let's be honest. This season, again, to mentally overcome certain milestones, and you have to do that season on season to improve. And we did last season. Most goals scored. Our defense was immense. We were getting goals from Saka, Trossard, Odegaard. I know that everyone wants a striker, but the truth is we scored more goals than we've ever done in the Premier League. It's about being clinical, right? So I'm going to morph into the, can Mikel crack the Emery code by weaving it into the starting 11 a little bit with you. So we talked about the two of them. Now, you mentioned Emery and his prowess. Emery's prowess is in Europe, right? But last season, he proved that he could do it in the league in terms of dragging a side like Aston Villa that was, when you think about it, Dan, they were in relegation zone with Gerrard. And he took over and he did a phenomenal job. And what he's done at Villa, I don't think anyone can deny. Yes, they've spent money, but most teams have spent money. And I think Mikel Arteta wants this one really, really bad, especially because he's the man who he replaced at the Emirates. So if we talk about the three things, I wanted to pitch these to you. I think team selection tomorrow is massive. And I was at the Emirates for the opening game against Wolves. And there was two in particular, and I'll start with this one, right? Let's start from the back going forward. I thought Zinchenko had a really good game up until the last 25 minutes. You, Albert, Tom, and I talked in the Tollington afterwards about how he was great, but then sometimes for the last 25, 30 minutes of a match, he kind of mentally isn't as engaged as he would be. Jurrien Timber came on and I thought had an immediate impact in that match. What are you doing tomorrow with that back line? What does it look like to you?
Well, the back line, let's stay with the back five. Obviously, David Reyes in goal, Ben White, Saliba, and Gabriel. And for me, I do not want to see Zinchenko anywhere near the starting 11. I'll tell you why I don't. Because as much as I think he's probably been one of the better performers in pre-season, and I thought he was fine against Wolves, we haven't seen him have to defend at all yet. When we see him having to defend, it is a disaster, Sophie. As much as I like him offensively, with the ball at his feet, I think he's great, technically gifted, drifts into midfield, inverts very well, and gives us something pivotal going forward for sure, right? But defensively, we're going to have to be solid. It isn't one of those games where we breeze past Villa and this is going to be, how many is it going to be today? 3 or 4 or 5. This is going to be a tight game. We're going to have to be defensively solid and defensively stable. And isn't it ironic that we have actually got two left backs in Timber and Calafiori and we're still playing Zinchenko? We need to get these two fit because they're better than him defensively. And with games like this, Zinchenko is absolutely, I can tell you this now because I've done a lot of previews with Aston Villa fans over the last couple of days. They are praying with all their might that Zinchenko starts. They are praying, please play Zinchenko. I was saying the same, please play Matty Cash, but he's injured, so they've got to play Konza and Carlos and Torres, right? So for me, the Matty Cash scenario is their Zinchenko scenario. They are rubbing their hands together. They're saying, please, Arteta, be stubborn. Keep him in. He's been brilliant for you, which he could do, by the way. For me, it's got to be Jurrien Timber. Now, I would normally say Calafiori because he's the new signing. We haven't seen enough of him. We haven't seen enough of him at all. But I think it'd be very, very strange to throw him in all of a sudden in the deep end there when he's hardly played in the minutes at Arsenal at all and got used to his back line, right? For me, Timber looks sharp. He looked fantastic. Yes, he made a mistake, which people don't highlight, by the way, because if Zinchenko would have made that error, everyone would have been on him. But Timber actually did make a mistake. But actually, to me, I do feel personally like it has to be him who starts. If he's fit. If he's not fit, you go with Calafiori. Zinchenko, for me, is the third choice at the moment for this game. Maybe not in the others, but for me, defensively, liability. And with Leon Bailey doing what he did to him last time, he's probably still having nightmares and probably saying, Mikel, please don't pick me. Please don't pick me. Oh, he's picked me. Now I've got to have that. That's what I think he'll be like in his head. So for me, it has to be Timber or Calafiori. So.
Real quick one from Ian before we move on. When fans say Calafiori isn't up to speed yet, when we talk about Calafiori not being up to speed yet, he had amazing Euros. He had a summer break, maybe more so than some of the Arsenal players, Dan. Why wouldn't he be up to speed yet? He joined the team in Philadelphia. He's been around the squad. He's been in all the training sessions. As far as we are aware, he's not injured. Why wouldn't he be ready?
So when I said I don't think he's ready, it wasn't actually me talking. It's Mikel talking because that was what he said in the interview. He's only just landed. Well, the geezer's been here 3 weeks. He was over in America with him. He's not just landed. He should be ready. So that's a really good question. Me and Curtis were talking about this on my channel yesterday. Why is he not ready? The guy's not just landed. He's been with the team a long time. He's been training. And if I'm honest with you, everybody's crying out to see this guy, right? We've signed him as the big name signing so far. He's the only signing this transfer window so far. Is £42 million worth of a left back that, let's be real, everyone's talking about. I would want to play him tomorrow. Excuse me, to want to play him tomorrow. Will he? I don't know, man. I kind of get a bad feeling about this one. I feel like he's going to be stubborn and goes in. He's been so good with keeping him in. I honestly believe, and I said this on the preview, if he's in that starting 11, I am predicting 2-1 Aston Villa.
Okay. All right.
Real
Dan's
talk.
made it clear about that back line and what he expects or what he'd love to see with that left back. And Ryan, congratulations on winning the Anelka shirt on Football Prizes last week. Well done to you. You mentioned the midfield, so let's get into that a little bit. Now, I chose these three things because I really truly believe that if we get it right, we can beat this Aston Villa team. I don't think that the game against West Ham was very interesting. I don't know what Lawless thought about it and if he thought West Ham should have at least got a point from that. Maybe in the last 20 minutes, Aston Villa kind of put on the onslaught and went for the jugular against West Ham in that match, Dan. But I do feel like this early in the season, you make a statement and you make it loud, especially away from home. That away form is really important. So if we go to the midfield, there's, I wouldn't say conundrum. We just have choice, right? But it depends on what your poison is and pick your poison. Of course, we know that in principle, they say a deal has been done with Mikel Marino. That is a long way off to see him in an Arsenal shirt. We saw Havertz deployed in midfield pre-season, Dan. Jorginho, for me, is my guy. And with the way Partey kind of fell away in that game against Wolves, I don't know if you agree with me in the second half, sloppy passes. Positionally, I thought he was a little bit off. Seemed, that he doesn't have that fifth gear right now. What are you doing in the midfield and how would you like to see Arsenal set up against an Aston Villa team? Like, let's be honest, I think they're pretty robust in that midfield area.
They are. I think this is the most important area of the pitch, Soph. I think if we dominate this department, we'll win the game. I am going to stick with Partey, Rice and Odegaard. But Partey had one of the best games in the first half and one of the worst games in the second half. I think he gave the ball away 5 times. I think I listened to James and Graham on Tactical Insight on AFTV talking about how Thomas Partey in the last 30 minutes of the game was awful. And he really was. He was giving the ball away for fun. So we have to change again if that's the case. But Thomas Partey gives us so much in transition that I think he has to play at the base. Declan Rice in the 8 and then Odegaard for me in the 10. And then I think what we do is when we start to see that Partey's losing some legs, maybe even do it at halftime if you feel you have to, Jorginho comes in. None of this dropping Rice to the 6 and putting Havertz in the 8. At the moment, we don't have that 8 until Marino arrives, right? I don't want to see Kai Havertz in midfield. I really just don't want to see that. That was the reason we lost the league, in my opinion, against this fixture at the Emirates. We put him in that dropped for no reason back into the 8 and against Bayern Munich. And we went out of both competitions. And we were out of the title and the Champions League. So why are we doing that? That's got to be one of the things Mikel can't do. For me, Jorginho, the last time he was here, smashed the ball in the last minute. I know it hit Emi Martinez and went in, but that was a great memory. Jorginho plays well against Aston Villa. So for me, that's the option, is you play Partey, Rice and Odegaard, and then you bring on Jorginho when Partey's legs are gone.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that in the sense that Thomas Partey start well, but in this particular game, and I understand what you're talking about at Villa Park, that was a beautiful moment for Jorginho, especially like how he silenced a lot of Arsenal fans that were, again, not happy that we signed a player from Chelsea. But in terms of what I felt that was lacking in that last half an hour against Wolves was somebody to come into the midfield and put their foot on the ball. Odegaard overworks. He's overworked. And he has to do too much sometimes. Yeah. And you want that player who's just going to put his foot on the ball and spread the passes, also be able to kind of, give that defensive support to that back line. And real quick, I just want to ask you, for you, the argument is Rice a 6 or an 8? Let's just say Mikel Marino comes in and we have those options. Are you playing Rice as the 8 or the 6? Because for me, Mikel Marino's the 8.
I think Rice is the 6. I think Rice has always been the 6. I think that he has been able to play in the 8 because everybody wants to see Partey, Rice and Odegaard. And don't get me wrong, Declan Rice was good in the 8. But for me, I think he can do both roles. However, I think that he has been brought in to be the 6. Because Mikel Marino, I think it's been quite clear that Granit Xhaka was pivotal to that kind of trio working the season before with Partey, Xhaka and Odegaard. Now you've taken Xhaka out. Declan Rice should have been brought in and Xhaka should have stayed. And it should have been Rice, Xhaka and Ødegaard. But because Xhaka had gone, we now need to replace him. And it looks like Merino is going to do that. In terms of the stats and the physically imposing attributes that he does possess, I do think that he's going to be our 8, and I think Rice will be our 6, and Partey and Jorginho will be the kind of players that, not so much what El Neni did, because he hardly kicked a ball last season, but they will be there as backups, probably playing 15 games apiece this season, in my opinion, because we just can't rely on Thomas Partey due to injuries. Mm-hmm. So for me, I think Rice, Merino and Ødegaard, I think will be the trio, if I'm honest.
All right. We sorted out the left back. We sorted out the midfield. And again, the third thing for me, and this is something I think that is really interesting, based on the fact that Leo Trossard was our most clinical finisher last season. And, you know, Martinelli did not have a great season. He has to, I think, prove himself a little bit. I even thought at that match against Wolves that he reverted back to what we were seeing with head down, not looking up, holding on to the ball too long, wanting to make things happen really badly, Dan, and sometimes just needs to release the ball a little bit quicker. I think at this point in his career at Arsenal, these are the things that he needs to have had overcome, and these are the improvements that we need to see. Granted, you know, he didn't play a lot last season. In preseason, I thought he looked hungry, he looked on the ball, he looked like he had his touch back. But in that match against Wolves, I felt like he was really poor and did not deserve to stay on the pitch. So when you look at the front three, you've said no Havertz for you in midfield. What does that front three look like? What do you think it's going to take to break down a pretty tough Aston Villa defence?
So Kai Havertz starts in the 9. That's clear. And Saka starts wide right. I think Martinelli is probably one of my favourite players when he's on fire. And I also am not ready to give up on him. But I'm using him as a weapon in this game from the bench. And I'm starting Trossard. I'll tell you why I'm starting Trossard. Not just because he can come in with his pace, because Martinelli's got that. They play a high line, Soph. Yeah? And I think that we can tire them through our press. And I think with the late substitutions of Jesus and Gabriel Martinelli, we're giving them pace, creativity and power that I think they might not be able to handle. So I'm starting Trossard. The reason I'm starting Trossard on top of that, for his attributes, technically I think he's better than Martinelli, if I'm honest. He's got great both feet. I think he's an unbelievable player and probably one of the most underrated performers in an Arsenal shirt. Of the 12 goals that he scored last season, 7 of them were away from home. He's got to play in the away game. He's got to. For me, absolutely has to play this game. And if I see Zinchenko and Martinelli, I'll actually be a little bit deflated at the start of this game. If I see Trossard and Timber start, I'll be excited. Now, I like Martinelli, and I'm not willing to give up on him, but he does need to sort out his performances. But for me, Trossard starts this one, Soph, and Martinelli comes on.
Okay, so someone mentioned in chat, and let me find it, PW. Start Martinelli for speed. He just needs a proper left back, Sophie. So, you know what's really weird? In the Wolves game, correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, but there was a time where when Timber came on, he was on the right. Yes. He was like bombing it on the right and putting in crosses on the right. One of the biggest issues that Arsenal fans had last season is how our left side just can't operate as effectively as our right side. I actually thought when Kivior came in, he did well, but he did well against limited teams. When he was tested against Bayern Munich, we saw that quality. And if we're being honest, he hasn't seen the first team proper since that performance at the Emirates against Bayern Munich. What's your take on, does Martinelli get a pass? Because if Jurian was playing last season, if a Calafiori was playing last season, that left side would look a lot different. What's your take on that?
Yeah, my take is this. He doesn't get a pass. He needs to look at his own performances. However, I will tell you where this is different to Trossard. Trossard is a better footballer than Martinelli. So therefore doesn't have the limitations that Martinelli has. Martinelli got 15 goals the season before. He had a Granit Xhaka, left-footed midfielder next to him that was spraying the ball to him very, very well, by the way. And he had Zinchenko behind him every single game. So he had a little bit of telepathy and communication, a little bit of sustainability around him. Last season, Trossard and Gabriel were the only two that really managed on that left-hand side to put in consistent performances. Zinchenko was poor. Timber was injured. Tomiyasu played a few games before injury. Kiwior, you've mentioned, played at left back. At left 8, we started with Havertz, who was poo there. Declan Rice moved into that role. Fabi Vieira, Smith Rowe, Trossard. I can keep going on. We need some sustainability over here, which is why I think the signings of both Calafiori and Marino make sense. Because Calafiori will be our left back, whether you like it or not. He will be, I think. I mean, you're not going to buy a £42 million player and just go, yeah, just we'll let you know when we need you. We might not need you this year. Marino's coming in as the left 8, as we've just mentioned. That for me means there's no more excuses with Martinelli this season once those two players are input, because they're going to be, what we need to do is allow our right-hand side to be exactly symmetrical to our left-hand side, because everybody knows what our right-hand side is, Soph. Everybody knows our Odegaard and Saka and White and Saliba play so well together. We need that left-hand side to replicate that. And I think that would definitely allow Martinelli to flourish. And more importantly, mate, if it doesn't, it's a Martinelli problem.
What do you think about what Archangel's saying here? Problem is Trossard offers nothing tracking back, whereas Martinelli will run for 95 minutes. I think I'm not sure if it's a myth about Trossard not tracking back. I don't think he's as good defensively in tracking back as Martinelli, but I don't think he's as bad as what Archangel was insinuating here, Dan.
I agree with that. I think it's a little harsh to say Trossard doesn't track back. I think he does. He might not be as good as Martinelli at it. I think he does. What Trossard does not have over Martinelli is pure pace. Now, I actually think Martinelli might have lost a yard of pace, to be fair, Soph, but he's definitely quicker than Trossard. There's a typical example last season at the Etihad where he goes through. If that's Martinelli, he's one-on-one on goal. Because it's Trossard, he's had to control it and pick out a pass, and the pass doesn't go through to Martinelli, who, funny enough, was on the pitch, but on the other side. So for me, that's just a typical example of what Martinelli can bring over Trossard, is pure pace and direct speed. But I do think Trossard has been really good, and in pre-season, particularly against Bayern Leverkusen, he was absolutely outstanding at the Emirates. So for me, I'd rather start him on the left, man.
For me, Trossard has that super sub capability. I would like to see Martinelli kind of see how he affects the game when he starts, Dan, how he evolves. But either way, I think Trossard off the bench has more impact than Martinelli off the bench. I think Martinelli is the kind of player that plays better when he starts, but we'll have to see. And what a beautiful dilemma, right? You've got Trossard who can play in that position. You've got Martinelli. You've got Gabriel Jesus. And that right side is really still the issue, isn't it? If Saka goes down, what happens? Is Waneri going to play in that position? I think Jesus is a great backup. But just to get your take real quick, where does Jesus fit into this team for you this season?
Jesus is one of the most important substitutes at the moment that we've got. Now, there are certain games that he probably will play in the 9. But for me, he is the guy at the moment, Jesus, that allows Saka not to get crocked and not to get fatigued, because he needs to be playing more as a wide forward. And I think when I look at Jesus, technically on the ball, he's one of the best to watch. He really is great. He's exciting. He's got unbelievable skill. He brings players into game well. We saw that at the home game when we beat Manchester City and Saka was injured. He played at the right wing and he was phenomenal. When he came on against Bayern Munich, he set up the goal for Trossard. He is a good player, so some people are kind of sleeping on him a bit too much, I think. I actually really like Gabriel Jesus and do think he's a top talent. I see him more as a squad player this season, though, Soph, and I wonder how much he will want to actually be that squad player. He left Manchester City because of that reason. So we do have to watch Gabriel Jesus this season. But for me, he doesn't get in the first 11 at the moment.
Yeah. And I agree with you. I think he brings a level to the game that I just think sometimes goes unnoticed. And in that first season, we saw that he elevated, I think, Saka and Martinelli's performances, what he does off the ball. We've talked about that ad nauseum. I think brings this elevated kind of game plan that Arteta loves in terms of his possession-based football. So for me, I think Gabriel Jesus could have a massive, massive impact on this squad this season. And, you know, whether he plays or covers for Saka or plays on the left, I think the position that most Arsenal fans don't want him to see is playing down the middle in that number 9 role. And, you know, I think that he could have one of the biggest seasons yet for Arsenal for all the reasons I've just said. And I think he's desperate to cook. Whoever said that, let's see, Arteta's someone said that just now. I think that he's a player that is really chomping at the bit to improve and show what he can do. All right, so we're starting Jurriën Timber if he's super fit at left back. Calafiori, you know, it's really funny. Arteta cooks slowly, doesn't he? We've seen that with his signings. Rice is a play that got thrown in. I think at the time, Benjamin White, Tomiyasu, those are the players we desperately needed because the quality just wasn't there. They get thrown in, right? Jesus, Zinchenko, they got thrown in. They're players he worked with before.
Odegaard.
During Odegaard, yeah. It just seems like with certain players with the, Calafiori's going to cook a little bit. But I think once he starts cooking and he gets that starting 11 or whoever he thinks his second best options are, I think that will fly. So you're saying Jurriën Timber tomorrow, more likely he'll start Zinchenko. You don't want to see Havertz in midfield. You'd start Partey, bring in Jorginho when Partey's legs go a little bit. You are starting Trossard with Havertz and Saka. So how do you see the game going, Dan? What do you think? What does your crystal football tell you about tomorrow's match against Aston Villa, who I think we're meeting them at a time of the season where their Champions League football hasn't started. I think Aston Villa could run into Newcastle United issues this season. Enamored with the Champions League, excited about being in it, might affect their ability to qualify for top four again. What do you say?
It's a good time to play them, and it was the worst time to play them the last time we did. They just beaten Manchester City. They'd come into our ground thinking that they would upset our title challenge. We played them twice at bad times, really, if I'm honest with you. I don't think we'll do a Newcastle. However, I don't have them winning stuff and comfortably getting top four. I actually think in my prediction table I've put them fifth without a trophy, but I do think they'll still be in and around that. They've got a good squad. They've definitely built a squad now. They've lost a couple of players in Diaby and Douglas Luiz, but they have bought a couple of players as well, like Anana and Barkley and some of the others, Philogene, etc. I do feel, though, this game tomorrow will be won in midfield. And I said that earlier. I do believe that if we dominate that midfield, I think what we will do is we will crumble them. Now, they have two outlets in Leon Bailey and Ollie Watkins. If we can try to win that midfield battle, they won't get the ball. And that's what we've got to do tomorrow, is win that midfield battle. So for me, Rice, Partey and Odegaard and Jorginho, whoever he comes on, if he brings Ethan Nwaneri or drops whoever it be in midfield, we need to be absolutely solid, because that is where the game is won and lost for me. That is where I am at. And I say this every time, take your chances, man. Don't get to a stage where Trossard's missing from 2 yards again, like last season at the Emirates. Don't get to a stage where Havertz missing sitters. We can't be dealing with that this season. That's got to happen. If we're not going to buy a striker, dare miss those chances, because otherwise you're going to get absolutely done in by the fan base. And Mikel Arteta will as well, by the way, they do. So for me, we can't be missing chances like that. So yeah, we've got to kill off the game. And you know what? Mentally, Soph, this is huge. The manager's got to sort out this mentality, because this is a huge one. It is.
Yeah, I agree with you. So what's your scoreline? And if you were to pick your crystal football a player of the match, what does Dan Potts see?
Yeah, I'm going to go 2-1 Arsenal. I think we will concede a goal. I think Bailey or Watkins could potentially get in behind us at one stage. If he plays Zinchenko, I will pick a different result. But I think he's going to go with Timber here, and I think he's going to let us down. So I feel like it will be a 2-1 win. Player of the match, I am going to go, because I believe this will be won in midfield, with our destroyer, Declan Rice. That's who I'm going to go with. I think Declan Rice needs a good game, and I think he will have one. He came off with cramp and wasn't himself, if I'm honest, against Wolves, but I feel this guy's mentality is good enough, and I think he'll get us over the line. It was going to be between Rice or Odegaard for me. And I feel like Declan Rice might just be a little bit more important in the midfield battle with Anana and all the rest of them. So I'm going to go 2-1 Arsenal, Declan Rice, player of the match.
I know a lot of people won't want to hear this, and I say this with respect, but Declan Rice looked absolutely gassed in that game against Wolves. And he was one of our worst players and kind of got away with it a little bit. I know there were criticisms towards Partey for being cheap with the ball, Zinchenko being cheap with the ball late on, Martinelli not looking up, but Declan Rice offered very little in that match. So it's a big game for him to kind of be able to bounce back. I know he's played a lot of football since the European Conference final with West Ham, going into the Arsenal season, his first, and then also playing for England at the Euros. So hopefully he's a player that could bounce back pretty soon, because my goodness, that's about the worst game I've seen Declan Rice play, other than the West Ham game at home at the Emirates, Dan. And I don't think it's harsh. It's harsh in saying that.
he's going to have games like that. He's got credit in the bank. Let's hope we don't see too many more.
Yeah. Magic Mike in the house, and we're going to let you know about what Magic's up to as well. He says he misses Vesper. So just for Mike, we're going to bring out the Vesper Giphy right here. Vessi headering the ball, asking you to hit the like button. And of course, for Suraj, who's going to be listening on replay, hit that like button. Vinny in his dicky bow. You guys know it. We love it. Just one more for you there, Magic Mike. Before I carry on with Dan for a couple of minutes here, seeing as Mike's in the house right now, Dan, he's weaving more magic with another event. It's the first annual Arsenal Art Fair, and it's going to be epic. It's on the 30th of August, and you can go to his if you go to Gooners podcast, if you go to Gooners v Cancer on Twitter, if you go to @the_Gooners_pod, but if you also go to goonersvcancer.com, you'll get all the information on Eventbrite. There's a whole list of things and happenings that are going to be occurring. There are some absolutely phenomenal prizes that you can win if you donate. It is the first annual fair, and it's featuring some of your favorite Arsenal artists: Ruth Beck, Del Llewellyn, Charlie Shanks, Carl Bork, North Banksy. There'll be raffle prizes, a charity auction, and it's going to be amazing. I'm going to repost the Talented Gooners interviews that we did with Ruth and Del. But this is a brilliant gathering of Arsenal fans once again. And it's a fabulous event, and you're not going to want to miss it. So please support it if you are in the London area. Dan Potts, will you be going?
100% I'll be there, and you need to go there because rumour has it that Ruth Beck is going to be painting Mike with nothing but a bow tie on. That's it. You've got to come and see that, all right? Make sure you've eaten before, people. Or should I say, let's make sure you don't eat before. I'm joking, Mike. I love you really, man. But yeah, no, I'll be there. So I'm looking forward to it.
And Mike says you don't have to be there to win raffle prizes. You can enter the raffle at this. Oh, I'll put it all in. I've added to the description, Mike, and we'll make sure that everyone gets to see it. No problem.
Go goonersversuscancer.com, people. It's all there. Honestly, it's the easiest way to do it.
Grab it there. Okay, so we've talked about how Arteta can crack the code with our positional decisions, left back, midfield, and up top. Really want to get your take on this. The PFA Awards this week, and 5 of our players in the PL team of the season. It's really difficult to look at that picture and not see Saka in it. And I get it, Dan. I really do. But I feel like Saka is one of the most disrespected players on the planet. Do you think it's fair or foul that I say that? Am I talking out my jack side? What is your take on the disrespect for Bukayo Saka? I get the Manchester City players, but still, overall, he just doesn't get the respect that he deserves.
He is the most disrespected player in the Premier League, for sure. I don't know any other 22-year-olds that's been carrying a team the size of Arsenal for the last 4 seasons. He has been phenomenal. And even last season, people said he had a really bad season and he wasn't quite himself. 33 GA, wasn't it? 34 GA. Mm-hmm. The guy is ridiculously good, man. He is our best player, really. When you look at it, he is our best player. I know some people will think it's Ødegaard or that it's Rice or that it's Saliba, but I think Saka is our best player because he just keeps turning up. And I honestly do believe when you look at Saka, the biggest, what's the word I'm looking for? The most obvious thing, I would say, as to why this is the case, the most evidence and all the evidence that you need about why Saka is disrespected is because the whole of that England tournament, most of us were pretty poor. Most of us were. Nobody really looked at that tournament and thought, there's about 8 or 9 performing out here and 2 or 3 that aren't. But everybody was on their cases. Drop this Saka for Palmer. Get this Palmer in. This Saka's dreadful. This Saka's dreadful. Then he started scoring. Then he was the reason we were still in the tournament. Then he started delivering again. Then he started assisting again. Then he started scoring again. And everything went quiet. You would not know that one of the worst players on the pitch was actually the one that took his place in the PFA Team of the Year in Phil Foden. There is absolutely no respect on Bukayo Saka whatsoever. It is always pile it on him. And what I love about it, right, is for game week 1, I saw something which I hope I see more of. And I'll tell you what it is. Not Saka scoring and assisting without even having a good game that people told me again, because that's what he did at Wolves. I'm actually talking about the Chelsea-Man City game here now. For the last 3 seasons, Saka's had at least 2 to 3 players on him every single game. They double, triple team him, don't they, Soph, right?
Yeah.
For the first time, I saw that happen to Cole Palmer. I didn't see him kick the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I understand it's Manchester City, but this is a Manchester City side that at the time had no Foden, had no Rodri, had no Stones, had no Walker, and they absolutely destroyed him. So let's see what Cole Palmer's like when he gets triple teamed and double teamed. Let's see if he's better than Saka this season. That's what I'm saying.
That's a brilliant point. I love that. And it's indelible in my mind, that picture of Saka when we played City at the Emirates and there were 5 City players around him. You remember that picture, right, Dan?
Yeah.
He gets kicked, he gets battered. And you know what I thought you were going to say? Because this is what I saw when I was at the game at the weekend. There's an edge to Saka. There was an edge to Saka in that match. Not saying he was, it felt to me like he had an attitude, but one of those attitudes of, I'm so good, you're going to have to come and get it from me. That's what it felt like to me. He looks lean. I mean, he's become a man. I don't want to hear anyone call him star boy anymore. Please call him star man. His physique, his presence, what he provides. And then when he was subbed off, the love that the Emirates showed for him, I agree with you. There's this ongoing conversation. Who's the most important player? Is it Saliba? Is it Odegaard? Is it Havertz? It's Bukayo Saka. That is his team. If this was American sports, in American sports, they build teams around a certain player in a different way. The nucleus of everything. Bukayo Saka is the heartbeat of Arsenal Football Club. He's the marketability factor. He's the Haylender, and he is the future of this club. And what we're going to have to do is win and start winning some major trophies, because you do not want a scenario where someone like Bukayo has all the accolades, all the goals, all the assists, all of the nice stuff, but without the medals. That's the thing that worries me the most.
Yeah, and listen, the PFA Team of the Year, big up to all of the guys that got it, and they absolutely deserve to be in there. But Bukayo Saka, trust me, we have a season like I expect most fans want us to have. I'm sure he'll be in there, man, because Bukayo Saka is one of the best players in the league when everyone's on form. And I don't care saying it. Listen, there's a section of our fan base that will hype him up. Maybe that's what annoys rival fans. He ain't world class. He ain't better than Salah. He ain't the new Cristiano Ronaldo. No one said he is, man. And the section of the fan base that do say that he is are clearly deluded. But this is a top talent. And it does not mean that because he's not Ronaldo or better than Salah, that he's not one of the best in the league, man. I think he's incredible. So, big up to Bukayo, man.
I love doing shows with POTTS as well. And if you agree with Donna, please hit the like button and smash it. Newman thinks we're Starsky and Hutch. I wonder who's Starsky and who's Hutch.
Well, listen, I'll let you decide that stuff. You know what I mean?
Brilliant stuff. Right. Dan, what have you got coming up on your show? And is there something I haven't asked you tonight that you would like to leave with the squaddies?
Listen, all I would say is we're going to find out this weekend, squaddies, what the mentality is like at Arsenal right now. Because this is one of the games that I wanted us to win last season, and it's the game that I want to win this season. Now, don't get me wrong. If we don't win the game, I'm not going to walk away saying our mentality is rubbish, but it will definitely be a big statement win if we are to win this one. And some people, rivals, will tell you it's not. Oh, my God, it's Villa. You're supposed to beat Villa. Blah, blah. Yeah, we are supposed to beat Villa, but this is actually a big game. Trust me. What have I got coming up, Soph? Come follow me on Football's 12th Man. The whole of this weekend and next week will be reaction shows will be the weekend's action. We've got Race for Europe on Monday nights. We've got the Arsenal Roundabout show on Tuesdays. On Wednesdays, This Is London is back. Trust me, that one was heated on Wednesday night. And then Thursday, we got Rival Talk with all of the guys from all of the clubs in the Premier League talking about their teams, transfers as well, because obviously that's coming to a close soon. And check out the weekend preview, which I've done tonight with the guys on Arsenal and Villa and Man United and Brighton. And that'll be me, Football's 12th Man. Thanks a lot, Soph. Pleasure.
Brilliant. Keep shining, keep rising. And we'll have a new Get Off the Potsy for you in a couple of weeks. A new subject with another top 5 from Dan the Man. And of course, remember, guys, don't forget the art fair. Go over to goonersvcancer.com, get all your details. Don't forget your football prizes, opportunities. And if you please do me a favor, everybody, Showbiz Squad, which is a show a lot of you are enjoying right now, which taps back into my film days. I did an interview with the wonderful Jennifer Esposito. Her new film, Fresh Kills, if you're looking for something to watch this weekend, is absolutely wonderful. And Jennifer was superb in the interview. There's been a lot of feedback, and thank you for that. If you haven't seen it, please go and see it. She talks about Spike Lee. She talks about making her movie. She talks about being in the industry as a woman. And she is just a beautiful human being who's done great things in her career. And please go and support that show as well. Dan, thank you very much for joining Squad Central. Squaddies want more, but we're going to leave it there wanting you more, people. I will be back for a post-game show tomorrow. I'm going to reignite the post-game shows. So if you guys are up for it, we will make it happen. Until then, Squaddies, at ease. And remember, don't forget to tell your loved ones you love them. Good night, everyone. See you tomorrow. Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad.